Chapter 2 The Education of Mary Todd. Morning did not enter the Todd house so much as haunt it. Thin spectral ribbons of light slipped through the shutters, held his breath on a tombstone, brushing the floorboards with a hesitant, trembling hand. In that dim glow, Mary Todd was already awake, sitting upright, silent, rigid with the discipline the house demanded. Here warmth was conditional, her silence was survival. Below her room came the muted clatter of the kitchen, the soft, steady movements of the enslaved women who rose long before the family. They tended the fires, they prepared the day. Their footsteps were the first sounds the house ever made, yet no one spoke their name at breakfast. Sometimes in that half-light, Mary imagined she could still smell her mother's lavender soap, faint, impossible, a memory clinging to the air like a ghost refusing to leave. But when she blinked, it was gone, swallowed by the cold. At 9 o'clock, Mary stepped into Reverend Ward's schoolroom. A long, narrow chamber, smelling of chalk, damp wool, and the iron tang of winter. The tall windows trembled beneath the wind, their panes quivering like fragile bones. Mary sat straight back, eyes bright, listening the way some children pray, with hunger, with reverence, with a yearning so sharp it felt like a wound. Words became her refuge. French curled on her tongue like a whispered spell. Doors opened, doors no one else could see. But every afternoon, she returned to a house that grew colder as it grew grander. When her father purchased the new home in 1832, the family called it an improvement. More rooms, more space, more children. But Mary felt the distance immediately. Echoing walls, the polished quiet, the way her stepmother's presence filled every doorway like a draft that refused to warm. The house was handsome, but it had no heart. Or if it did, it beat somewhere far from Mary. Sometimes she caught her reflection in the tall parlor mirror, small girl with solemn eyes, swallowed by a room too large for her. For a heartbeat, she imagined her mother behind her, soft hand on her shoulder. But the mirror showed only Mary, alone. So she learned to move like a shadow, to observe, to vanish, to sharpen her wit like a needle hidden in her sleeve. And then, unexpectedly, a door opened. Charlotte Mantelli's school stood at the edge of Lexington, half veiled behind the winter trees, clawing at the sky. The moment Mary stepped inside, she felt the warmth, not from the hearts, but from the voices, French, lilting, and alive. Laughter, books stacked in precarious towers like monuments to forbidden knowledge. A world where girls were not ornaments, but minds. Here Mary was not overlooked, she was seen. Madame Mantelli corrected her French with a gentle hand on her shoulder. She placed novels in Mary's palms like gifts, pieces of the world she'd never been allowed to touch. Mary breathed differently in that place, freer, fuller, as though the fog on the window of her childhood had finally begun to clear. One afternoon, as the girls practiced reading, a soft-voiced classmate named Clara Banks slid her chair closer. "You read as though the words belong to you," she whispered. Mary blinked. "Do they?" Clara smiled, a small, conspiratorial curve. "They do when you speak them." It was the first time another girl had spoken to her without pity or curiosity. Clara became a quiet companion, someone who shared her ink, her laughter, her whispers, her whispered observations. With Clara, Mary felt something she rarely felt at home: ease, belonging, permission to want more. During a lesson on French idioms, Madame Mantelli asked the class to translate a phrase about stubbornness. One girl guessed timidly, another stumbled through a literal translation. Mary raised her hand. "It means," she said, "that a person is so stubborn that it would argue with a stone wall." Madame Mantelli laughed softly. "Trees being, Mary." Clara leaned over. "You should teach the class." Mary allowed herself a small, dangerous smile. "I already do. You simply haven't realized it." The room rippled with quiet amusement, tiny rebellion, but it thrilled her like a secret flame. That evening, Mary crossed the threshold, of the grand new house. The familiar chill wrapped around her like an unwelcome shawl. The air felt heavy, as though the walls remembered every silence she ever swallowed. She paused in the dim hallway. Voices drifted from the parlor. "She's clever, yes," her father said, almost indulgent. Mary's chest lifted, foolishly, hopefully. "But cleverness in a girl is a passing amusement," he added. "She'll settle soon enough." Her stepmother laughed lightly, smoothing the hair of her own daughter. "Girls must learn their place early. It spares them the disappointment later." The words struck Mary like cold water. Then she saw one of the enslaved women pass silently through the doorway, carrying a tray with practiced grace. Their eyes met, just for a moment. In that glance, Mary saw exhaustion, resignation, and a quiet dignity no one else seemed to notice. Injustice pressed against her ribs. Her mind, quick, hungry, restless, was the only part of her the house could not reach. She stepped back from the doorway, unseen, unheard, her heart pounding with a new certainty. She would not settle. She would not shrink. She would not become what this house expected. Her mind was her escape and her weapon. "Mary Todd, where have you been?" Her stepmother's voice sliced through the hallway. "At school," Mary answered. "School ended an hour ago. I stayed to finish my work." "You stay to avoid your duties here." Mary lifted her chin. "My duties include my education." A dangerous silence settled. "You are a child," Betty snapped. "Your place is in the house." Something inside Mary steadied, not anger, but certainty, cold and clear as winter clouds. "My place," she said softly, "is wherever I am becoming myself." Her mother's face tightened. "Mind your tone." Mary bowed her head. She did not regret the words. That night, unable to sleep, Mary crept to the window overlooking the yard and the distant lights of Lexington. The glass was cold beneath her fingertips. She leaned forward, letting her breath fog the pain. A faint heart formed, just as it did years before. But this time she didn't wipe it away. Instead, she traced a single French word inside it. "Je suis, I am." The fog faded, but the certainty remained, a quiet flame settling in her chest. Mary Todd was becoming someone her stepmother could not contain, someone her father could not overlook forever, someone her mother would have recognized instantly. Somewhere between the cold house and the warm schoolroom, she understood. She was meant for a life larger than the one she had been given, and though she could not name it, something in the night seemed to stir in answer.